think he has finished this time. It was actually published in 1900, but the song goes back before that. The song goes back to 1891 as far as we can trace. It's an old Victorian, what was described as a Victorian moral ballad, which is rather interesting, sung there by Peter Dawson, who of course was Australian, in case you're not aware. And what a great song as well, The Miner's Dream of Home. In actual fact, it's very interesting because whilst researching this programme, there have been a couple of songs where there's been a little bit of controversy, and that is one of them because some people say that's called The Miner's Dream of Home. Other people say it's called A Miner's Dream of Home. And you could even find on different records and in different books and different encyclopedias, it says different things. It doesn't really matter, but certainly it's either A minor or B miner's Dream of Home. And that starts us off on Miller's Millennium this week from 1900 when the song was published. And of course, the thing to remember is with these early songs, we are talking about the actual song itself rather than hit versions. I mean, that was actually recorded in 1930. Now, Peter Dawson wasn't as old as you thought, but certainly the actual song was published in 1900, and that is what we're interested in. As I say, it was very difficult at the start to get the early Christmas songs together. And so as we move into the teens, 1915 is our next stop. And again, we're going to hear from Peter Dawson. I could only track down 2 songs from this particular era. One of them was in such a bad state that it was just impossible. The gramophone library had just one copy of it in London, and they did warn me. They said it isn't really broadcastable. And I said, well, the fact that it's 1915, we might be able to get away with it, even if we have a bit of a laugh rather than anything else. They sent it down, and it was hopeless. I mean, you just couldn't understand a word. There was hardly any tune either. I mean, there was very little of the record left. So we gave up with that one. And what we are going to do is play you a song from 1915 that is very, very popular even now. In actual fact, you'll know this song as something else. And if there are any youngsters lurking around, when they hear this, they'll say, why did Paul say it was called that? Because I know it as something else. Again, Peter Dawson is going to sing for us, and the piece of music we are referring to, Adeste, Fideles. Have you worked out what it is yet? You will in about 2 seconds. O Come All Ye Faithful, of course, we know it as. It was being sung in Latin, by the way, in case you were trying to work out what it was. Adeste Fideles, and it was sung there by Peter Dawson, and recording from... it was actually recording in 1915 as well, and very interesting to hear. In actual fact, that is one of the many recordings from that particular period that is now considered to be a classic, and certainly the original recordings, that 78, is now considered to be quite valuable. There aren't that many 78s that are valuable, as I've said to you before. I mean, I'm no expert, certainly when it comes to 78s, but I know through my research for this programme that is one particular 78 that is quite valuable if you have it, and it's got to be in good nick as well. It's no good if sort of the hole in the middle is about 4 inches in diameter and it doesn't play, but certainly that is considered to be a bit of a classic, and what a great recording it was as well, sung there by Peter Dawson. You're listening to Miller's Millennium on The Late Show from BBC Southern Counties Radio and BBC Radio Solent. I'm Paul Miller. We're looking through the music of the last 100 years, and this evening in the penultimate Miller's Millennium, we are looking at the Christmas songs as we make our way right the way through to the present day. It's just gone 9:30. And of course, if as you hear these songs, they bring back any memories or thoughts, do feel free to give us a call. Joanne's on the switchboard on 0645 570057. In fact, Molly rung from Farnborough a short while ago. Hello, Molly. She's in bed with the flu at the moment. That's charming, that is, isn't it, eh? In bed with the flu for Christmas, and so many people, I have to say, around here, people are dropping like flies. I mean, you can always watch them going. But anyway, she remembers her father singing the minor song to the family round the fire at Christmas when she was a little girl, and she doesn't mind admitting that she's now 76. Wonderful. Hope you're feeling better soon, Molly. You take it easy, and you keep yourself nice and warm as well. So, a song from 1900 and a song from 1915. Let's move on now to the 20s, and where we're going to go? I think we'll go to 1925, right in the middle. Now, songs started to become Christmassy now, okay? As I said to you a little bit earlier, it was the sort of 20s and into the 30s when we started to have Christmas songs as we know them now. And a lot of the songs that we now hear, sung by modern artists, people like Diana Ross, Johnny Mathis, that sort of thing, are quite often very old songs, as you'll discover in just a little while, and certainly a big surprise for those of you who liked a particular song by Nat King Cole. But anyway, I won't spill the beans. I'll do that very soon. For our song from the 20s, we're going to go back to 1925 and hear a song from a lady that, in actual fact, we featured in Miller's Millennium about 5-6 weeks ago. That was Bessie Smith, and this is a song called At the Christmas Ball. Yeah, 1925, Bessie Smith and At the Christmas Ball. I'll play that one for the lovely Joanne on the telephones because she's a bit of a blues queen, she is. She likes her blues and she gently rocks from side to side when we're getting on down. I think it's the music, or it may be what's in that glass in front of her, I'm not sure. Or maybe a combination of the two. Probably the latter, actually, Joanne, isn't it? She likes the blues, and so do we all. Great song. In actual fact, I must just read you a line from a book that I was using as part of it. I've used loads of books during the reference of this programme, and I thought this was wonderful. It says here, At the Christmas Ball by Bessie Smith, the bluesy feel on this song that's being honked by the Tennessee-born Queen of the Blues. I mean, what does it mean if you honk a song? I mean... I get the impression that the author of this particular book was desperately looking for a word and he thought, blow it, honked will do. So that was Bessie Smith there honking at the Christmas Ball in 1925. Perhaps she'd had too much vodka as well, but I'm not one for speaking. 21 minutes past 9. Let's move on very swiftly. Let's move on to the 30s now and hear a song from the latter part of the 30s, actually. Well, 1937 to be precise. This is a lovely song. It really is. What can I tell you about? It's a British song again, written by Tommy Connor, Jimmy Leach and Michael Carr. A number of versions of this particular song as well. The one that you'll be most familiar with is probably that of Nat King Cole. That seems to be the version that stands out that most people play. However, there is a version by Lita Rosa, an old Decca record that is quite popular as well. But we're going to hear what is considered to be the original of this particular song. And this is a great recording as well. And I'm delighted to say this is one of those 78s. The great thing about the Christmas records is they don't get played that often. So therefore, quite a lot of these 78s have been in excellent condition. And this is one such recording. From 1937, the song in question is The Little Boy That Santa Claus Forgot, being sung now, remember this person? Phyllis Robbins. Wasn't that just lovely? Beautiful song and great recording as well. Phyllis Robbins, 1937, and The Little Boy That Santa Claus Forgot. And that recording proves a point and proves something that I've been saying to people for a long time, and that is that 78s don't have to be old, scratchy records. The reason they usually sound as though someone's eaten their dinner off them is because quite often people did, and secondly, they were treated just like a bit of plastic, and even though they were made of shellac, and the fact that the way they were played, the old steel needles and those great big record players, the old gramophone, they didn't do anybody any good, including your arm having to keep turning the handle around. And so it's no wonder that some of them sound the way they do. I can tell you that is probably the first time that that 78 was ever played. I don't play the 78 actually on the programme. I had a letter from a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he said, do you really play the 78s? I can't imagine you sitting in the studio with 78s going round. And no, I don't. Obviously, for various reasons, we cannot have the 78s coming out of the gramophone library in London, because otherwise they would get damaged and they get broken too easily. So they're all dubbed across onto tape or other sort of media forms. But I can tell you a little note from the gentleman in the gramophone library to say this is probably the first time this has ever been played. And I mean the first time that actual disc has ever been used, when they dubbed it across onto the tape. And I think that was a good example of how the old 78s would have sounded if we didn't have the big horn and the silver needles and what have you. But never mind. Great, we got there. And a lovely song as well. Getting on for 27 minutes past 9. It's Paul the Late Show until 1. We are continuing Miller's Millennium. It's a special one on this Boxing Day. All Christmas songs. So where are we going to now? Oh, yes, we're into the 40s. I'm not laying down any bets as to what we're going to play from the 40s. 1942 saw a film. This film featured a number of songs. One of them in particular which has gone on to become the Christmas song of all time. And in actual fact, let me just quote something here, that when this film first came out back in 1942, it won awards, actually. It was an Academy Award-winning film, and also the song we're going to play won an award as well. But somebody turned round and said, "This particular song will be sung as long as there is Christmas." And it's absolutely true. The film that we're making reference to here is Holiday Inn, though on saying that, the song was also featured in the film Blue Skies, and indeed it was featured in the film White Christmas. Some people say it wasn't. It was. It was featured in all three. I don't have to tell you much else, really, do I? What I am going to do, though, is play you the original 78 recording of this song, because normally you would hear recordings that have been cleaned up and processed over the years, because this record has sold literally millions. It is just about the best-selling record of all time. 1942, written by Irving Berlin. I don't have to say any more, really, do I? White Christmas. Could you hear it scratching away there? What a wonderful song. It's such a lovely song. It doesn't matter how many times you hear it, it still does the magic. Great. Bing Crosby, White Christmas, 1942. That is the Christmas song. I don't care what anybody says, that is the Christmas song. And it's always a pleasure to hear it. I look forward to that every year. Just gone 9:30, Miller's Millennium. We're making our way through the music of the last 100 years. Special programme tonight being Boxing Day. We are looking at some of the old Christmas songs. And of course, we're going to make our way right up to the present day. Had a call from David in Guildford a short while ago, and he said that he always cried as a little boy in the late 30s when Phyllis Robbins sung The Little Boy That Santa Claus Forgot. And hearing the song again a short while ago, he said, made him cry again. Hope we made you cry for nice reasons rather than nasty reasons. But it really is a beautiful recording, as I said. And I think it's much, much better than the Nat King Cole version that a lot of people consider to be the definitive. But anyway, I'll leave that one entirely up to you. So White Christmas, 1942 it was for Bing Crosby, and that moved us into the 50s. And we're going to hear a song from 1956. Now, this is a song, I'm going to probably play you a strange version. This song was actually a hit in 1956. It got to number 23 in the charts for a gentleman called Dave King. But there is an earlier recording than that, the same year, but slightly before. This one wasn't a hit, but I think this is the best version, actually. This is an American song. I can't tell you an awful lot about it, really. I can't find an awful lot at all. Just this American song. There were very few recordings, but here's a wonderful old recording, an old MGM 78, which is unusual, really, for the 50s, but there are still a few of them lurking around. See, if you remember this one, you may remember the version that hit the charts by Dave King. But can you remember, and I'm going to do this as a little teaser, who is this actually singing the wonderful song, Christmas and You? I've stumped you with this one. People have been calling through with various suggestions. Rosemary Clooney seems to be the suggestion most people are going with. No, it wasn't. No. I have never come across another recording by that lady, though on the other hand, I've never actually searched that hard, but I've never come across one. 1956. An old MGM 78, MGM 696, one of the early ones. It was actually Joni James. Joni James with Lou Douglas and his orchestra. And I think that's a great recording of that song. I really do. Lovely. It was a hit for a Dave King in 1956. Actually hit the charts, went to number 23, and that's a version that you would recognise straight away. But I think she's got that little bit of magic. And I also like the magic of the old record going round in the background, as you probably will have gathered over the last few months. I think there is a certain magic, and that is one of the things that compact discs and other modern version of recording systems, well, you've lost. I think that's a little bit of magic. There's something about having a record that you're particularly fond of, and when you play a particular single or an album, whatever it happens to be, and you know the bit when it's going to jump or get stuck, or the bit when it's going to start clicking, and it reminds you of that party when you fell over and you bashed it against the wall and it's been scratched ever since. It has the memories. That's lovely. I like to hear those old scratches. It's a nice song, something a little bit unusual as well from the 50s. Joni James and it was 1956 with Christmas and You. 22 minutes to 10, so where are we on to now? We're on to the 60s. We're going to hear a song from 1964. And again, it's another one of those songs you don't get to hear very often. This was a hit. We had number 29 hit, in actual fact, with this song from Brenda Lee. And I cannot remember the last time that I heard this on the radio, but a really lovely song. Christmas will be just another lonely day. And as I say, this is Brenda Lee from 1964. 1964, Brenda Lee, Christmas will be just another lonely day. Now, when did you last hear that? Not for some time. You probably won't hear it again for some time either. Certainly won't be hearing it till next year, unless we're going to start playing Christmas songs in the middle of the year. Let's not tempt fate. Just gone 20 to 10, BBC Radio Solent, BBC Southern Counties Radio, Paul Miller with The Late Show until 1. We are continuing Miller's Millennium, looking at the music of the last 100 years, the penultimate programme this week, and we are looking at those Christmas songs. Now then, into the 70s. I can see you reaching for the cotton wool as we speak. We've had some very, very nice songs. We've been crooning along with the likes of Phyllis, Robbins, Joni James, Bing Crosby, and we started to tap our toes then to Brenda Lee. For the 70s, I thought about this long and hard, and we decided there is really only one song that we can play. If we didn't, it would defeat the object of this whole feature, and that has been to look at not all the music, but the most popular songs that have really been popular and very big over the last 100 years. And this is one such song. It goes, I suppose, without saying, it's probably one of the Christmas songs. Even though it came out in 1973, it sounds as fresh today as it ever did. Not only was it a hit in 1973, but it was then re-released in 1980, and it became a hit again. Then in 1981, 1982, 1983, 1984, 1985, and again in 1986. It was re-released in all those years, and each time it became a hit. Have you worked out what it is yet? I think you probably have. One of those great Christmas songs, 1973, from Slade. Like it or loathe it, it's up there with White Christmas. It has sold millions. Slade, 1973. Merry Christmas, everybody. I wonder if we'll hear that again now before next year. Possibly not. It's almost time to put those records away. So that's a song from the 70s. Let's move on to the 80s. And another one of those big songs as well. We had started to see the demise of the Christmas songs. They were very popular in the 60s and 70s. But then in the 80s, things started to ease off a little bit. But then in 1984, another little gem was written. And every year when we start to play the Christmas songs, this is usually one of the first to come out the box. We were wondering the other day just quite how much people like George Michael get every year. They must look forward to it, mustn't they? It comes to November and they think, my song will be coming out soon. I should have a nice check coming through the post. It was 1984, Wham, and Last Christmas. So just one more song to go in Miller's Millennium this evening. We've been looking at the music of the last 100 years with a Christmas flavour. And, I was looking at the music of the last 10 years, and there haven't been an awful lot of decent Christmas songs, if you think about it. We don't seem to have them anymore. People don't really bother. We had a couple of Cliff Richard songs from the early part of the 90s, things like Saviour's Day, but I thought it would be fair to end off with one of the most controversial Christmas songs of all time, and it probably is actually, and had this have been happening about 70 years ago, Lord Reith would have been there putting his little sticker on the record, not to be broadcast on the BBC under any circumstances. Yeah, strange. And funnily enough, some radio stations still haven't played it either. It was nearly number one for Christmas. I couldn't resist playing this from just this year, 1999. What a good way to end the last Christmas song of this century. Cliff Richard with the Millennium Prayer. You either love it or you hate it. And it's literally one of those songs, and I think it always will be. Obviously, it'll come out every year for Christmas, and it'll be that way. People will turn around and say, oh, not that again, turn that off. Or other people will turn around and say, oh, I like this, turn it up a little bit, George. It's going to be one of those songs. Cliff Richard with Millennium Prayer. And that is Miller's Millennium for this week, looking at the music of the last 100 years. And it's Boxing Day, looking at some of those great Christmas songs. And let's just run them down again, the songs that we've heard over the last hour or so. We started started off right at the beginning with a song from 1900, or certainly published in 1900. Anyway, the recording was from 1930, but a song published in 1900, The Miner's Dream of Home. And it was sung by Peter Dawson. And then we moved on to something a little bit unusual, actually. Peter Dawson again. Very difficult to find those early recordings. And Adeste, Fideles. Of course, we know that as something totally different, as we discovered earlier. And that was from 1915. We then moved on to the 20s, and from 1925, a song that, according to the sleeve notes, was honked by Bessie Smith. That was At the Christmas Ball. I'd love to know what that means. From 1937, I think probably if there was to be a super song of the night, I think it's the song from the 30s we had. It was 1937, Phyllis Robbins, a beautiful recording of The Little Boy That Santa Claus Forgot. Interestingly enough, I was talking to somebody in the BBC Gramophone Library the other day to see if there'd been any CD releases of that particular recording, and as far as they're concerned, there hasn't, which I think is a shame, actually. That's a beautiful song. I'm sure that would do very nicely if they were to release some of those on CDs. There are CDs available, by the way, of some of these old nostalgic Christmas recordings, but unfortunately that track doesn't feature. Never mind, we heard the original 78 and it was lovely to hear it. Then from 1942, the Christmas song of all time, there's no doubt about that, 1942, Bing Crosby with White Christmas. Then a song from 1956, this one had you stumped actually, it was Joni James singing Christmas and You. The hit version in the same year was by a gentleman called Dave King, and we were trying to work out what he now does as well. We believe he may have gone into to acting, but we're not 100% sure. I'm sure you'll know, in which case you'll give us a call. That took us into the 60s, and from 1964 we had Brenda Lee, and Christmas Will Be Just Another Lovely Lonely Day. 1973, Slade, whopping great big hit, Merry Christmas Everybody. The same holds true for Wham in 1984 with Last Christmas, and then it was Cliff Richard with the Millennium Prayer from the current year, 1999. That was Miller's Millennium for this week. Thanks for all your calls, by the way, over the last hour. I'm glad to know that you enjoyed hearing some of those old songs again. And it's always good. And it's also very interesting to see how things have changed musically over the last 100 years. And even for Christmas songs as well. Been good fun. We've enjoyed doing that. Perhaps we'll do it again sometime. I have to wait and see. We have just one more week to go with Miller's Millennium, and that will be next Sunday. Okay, and that is the last week of Miller's Millennium. But as I said, I hope you've enjoyed looking back at the music of the last 100 years. Must just briefly say hello to Chris, who's one of our taxi drivers in the area. He says, Merry Christmas to all the listeners, and he wishes we've included a wombling Merry Christmas. But there you go. That is him, you see. That is what he's like. Just had an email come through as well from Rebecca in Winchester. In fact, no, this was a call, and Joanne's emailed it through to me. Rebecca in Winchester heard a carol in London called Rolling Downwards Through the Midnight. She knows very little about it, wondering if we can help her and whether or not she could still get a copy. We have information to get back to Rebecca if necessary. So can you help us with that, please? Because I've certainly never heard of it. Does that ring any bells with you, Joanne? No, it means nothing. Was it an old song, did she say, or a new one, or did she give any sort of idea at all? You know, shout at me. Just never heard it before. Oh, quite recently she heard it, was it? We presume? Yeah, oh, right. Well, I've been to a carol service in London, and she heard a carol called Rolling Downwards Through the Midnight. She knows nothing else about it, would like some more details, and to find out whether or not there is actually a recording of it available. If that is the case, can you give us a call on 0645 570057, okay? That is the number to ring. And also just had Vera on the phone. She says, thanks for the Millennium Prayer. She's in her 80s, and she loved it. And also Alf from Paul had never heard it before, and he liked it as well. Well, that's wonderful. But as I said, it is one of those songs that you either love or hate. And in many ways, I admire Cliff for doing it, because EMI said, no, we're not going to release that. And he said, we'll blow you then. And he went off, and the rest is history. Straight to the top of the charts. And I think well deserved as well. But it is one of those songs you'll either love or you will hate. But anyway, it'll come out every year, and it'll go down as a classic. Right, it's 2 minutes past 10. Let us move on. So what are we doing over the next 3 hours? Well, the phone lines are open on 0645 570057 or Southampton 631316. We have Auntie Jo on those phones this evening. And the email, of course, is open as well, paul.miller@bbc.co.uk. Miller is spelt with an E. It's as in Windy Miller. Lots of people still coming through on the phone saying, Paul's email doesn't work. It does. It's just that my name is Miller, not Millar. Okay, so it's paul.miller, M-I-L-L-E-R, at bbc.co.uk if you'd like to get through on the programme this evening. Now then, a few things we're going to be talking about. One in particular, which I think will be good fun and rather interesting. But first of all, I've got a question for you. We just asked about the carol, which we're working on at the moment, this carol called Rolling Downwards Through the Midnight. We'll see if we can get some answers on that one for Rebecca in Winchester. And something else that's cropped up as well. Had a note left for me just a couple of days ago, and I cannot remember the lady's name. It was from a lady I know, and I cannot remember her name, so I've thrown the piece of paper away, which is very foolish of me. But I can remember the question, and it was this. She would like to know if it's true that if you rub mistletoe berries on a tree, that it'll start to grow. We're not talking about the tree starting to grow, but the mistletoe will start to grow from the tree. 'Cause it does, doesn't it? You find mistletoe sort of, it can grow on old apple trees or anything. And this particular lady had heard that if she rubs the berries of mistletoe on a tree, that it will start to grow. And we'd like to know if that's true or not. I've never heard of this before, I must admit. It means nothing to me. Does that make any sense to you? 0645 570057 or Southampton 631 316 is the number to ring. A very interesting question. Not a question that I've come across before, and certainly something that I wouldn't even dream of been able to answer. But I'm sure you can, in which case you'll get on that phone and tell us. Is that right? Because I know that mistletoe does. It grows on other trees, doesn't it? It sort of attaches itself to them or grows with them. And this particular lady had heard from a friend that if you rub mistletoe berries on a tree, it'll start to grow, and we'd like to know if that is actually the case or not. If you can give us a call with that, we would love to hear from you. That number again, 0645 570057 or Southampton 631 316. Very, very busy on those phones. Please be patient. Jo will be with you just as soon as she can. I'd also like to hear from you this evening on something else, which could be fun in a number of ways, and it could be quite amusing for other reasons, as you'll discover. As we get towards the end of this century, and I still think it sounds very strange to suggest that we're coming towards the end of the century. I always remember as a kid thinking that the year 2000 and the 21st century seemed such a long way away, and I'm sure my mother, if she's listening, will remember me saying to her once, I was only a little kid, and I said, Mum, will I still be alive in the year 2000? And she turned around and said, I hope so. Because to me, it always seemed sort of years and years away, thousands and thousands of years. It always seemed to be, way, way, way ahead. And here we are. We're almost there, heading in towards the 21st century, which is, amazing. And little questions crop up like, will 20th century Fox become 21st century Fox? That's a good question. Who asked that? One of the technocrats next door, no doubt. It's a good question, actually. Yes, 20th century Fox. Will it become 21st century Fox? Probably not. And will Nicholas Parsons come back with the sale of the Millennium? And tonight, live from Norwich, it's the pick of the week. The sale of the Millennium. Well, you can't say the century anymore, can you? It's not. Well, I suppose it is. Because we're coming towards the end of a century, but the word millennium seems to be on everyone's mind. I think people will be glad to see the back of it, actually, because a lot of people can't even say it. And if I say it more than 3 times, I can't. That's it. You've had your whack. But anyway, there's been a very interesting survey that's been commissioned. And they've been working on this one over the last year or so. And they've been asking people what they think, the most influential or the most useful invention has been over the last 100 years. What do you think it would be? They spoke to thousands of people all the way around the world, in the developed countries, talking of first world countries here, obviously, and they asked people what they thought the best or the most useful invention has been over the last 100 years. Well, I shall tell you in a moment what the answer was. You will be amazed. But in the meantime, I'd like to hear from you what you think the most useful or the most influential, the most amazing invention has been over the last 100 years. If you were to look back, what is it? What is the thing that you like to use?